I'm getting ready to go to my COVID test. I literally don't even have to get out of the car to get it done, so I'm just going like as casual as possible, but still looking somewhat put together. But the most ironic thing is that I think I might be having contractions, like real contractions. I've been working on my hospital bag today, and it's like almost done being packed. But I've been like timing these pains because it literally feels like a Braxton Hicks contraction, but so much more intense. Like normally my belly would just get tight, and now it's getting tight along with very not intense, but like period like cramps, I guess. So it's just like lower right here, and like I literally have to stop what I'm doing, breathe through it. Like it's painful. It's getting to be painful, so I don't know if these are real contractions. I don't know if it's just my body preparing. But they've been coming about every 4 to 5 minutes, so, and lasting about 40 seconds long. This is where I have to jump in and basically give you guys a rundown of my labor and delivery story, just because things went so fast, so unexpectedly, that I was really trying to focus on like me laboring, I guess, especially because I wasn't home with Hendrix. Kenny was at work, and so I just was really trying to focus on that. Because of that, I didn't get very much footage, but I still had such a special delivery that I wanted to share it with you guys, because it's something I'll always remember, and it was so different than my first delivery. Basically, as you guys saw, I started to pack my hospital bag. I just had this urge because it was the 5th. I had an induction planned for the 7th. Packing my makeup, and I was like, you know what, maybe I'll just start cleaning the guest bathrooms, pack up my makeup or what I want to bring, that way that's out of the way, and then I can like clean this so it's good for my mom, because she was going to fly out to come help us out with Hendrix while we were in the hospital. I don't know, it was probably like 10 or 11 when I was doing that. I don't really know what time it was, to be honest. May have been a little bit later, because I know at like 2 o'clock around then is when I started having what I didn't know were contractions. It was just like a very mild cramping, which I had talked about. It was just in my lower belly. That was it. Like it wasn't in my back. I wasn't having any other symptoms. It was just mild cramping that kept coming and going down in my lower stomach. And so I just kind of blew it off as like Braxton Hicks contractions. So it was like, you know, I hear the further along you get in your pregnancy, the worse those can get. So like, I'm sure that's just what it is. I kept going about my day, just trying to ignore them. 3 o'clock rolls around, and I was like, okay, maybe I should start timing these. So I just went to the app store and looked up like contraction timer and just downloaded the first one that I could find. Hendrix would not leave my side. Like, I was trying to breathe through some of these contractions, and I was starting to get slightly irritated because he would not leave my side. Like, I felt like I was tripping over him, and I'm just like, what the heck is going on? So I started texting my mom, because I was like, well, it's probably a good idea to keep her in the loop in case she has to come fly out earlier. So I sent her a screenshot of my contractions. I was like, I don't know if these are real contractions, but I'm timing them. They seem to be pretty frequent. I'll text you in an hour if it continues, but I'm sure it'll like subside. It's no big deal, but just in case you're aware. And then probably like 2 minutes later, because I tried going to the bathroom. I was like, maybe I just really need to go to the bathroom. So I'll try that. And when I did, I had some blood tinged mucus. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough for me to notice. It only happened the one time. And so I texted my mom. I was like, never mind, like, you are more than likely going to be catching a flight, but don't do it just yet. Like, I'm not completely sure, just hang tight. I tried drinking water, I tried going to the bathroom, I tried laying down. 4:25 rolls around, and I call Kenny at work, which I knew he was going to be off by 4:30, but I was having such a bad contraction, and I was in tears because I was scared, and I just wanted my support there. Like, he is just the one person, aside from my mom, that can get me through anything. Like, if he is there in the same room as me, I feel like I can conquer anything. So I called him at 4:25. I was on the phone with him and I was like, I think I might be in labor. And he's like, I am on my way. Click. He kind of missed the part where I said think. I probably could have waited until he got home, but sometimes, especially to where like we knew we were having an induction and I knew he had a ton to get done at work, that sometimes he'll stay a little bit later. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna call him just so he doesn't stay later, because I kind of want him here to be my comfort and my support. I've never seen Kenny get home so quickly. He like busted the front door and he was like, babe, 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 where are you? I felt bad because I'm just like normal. I have a smile on my face and I was like, yeah, I think I'm having contractions. I'm not really sure. And he's like, oh my gosh, I thought your water broke. He's like, as soon as I got off the phone with you, my coworkers were looking at me and they're like, is everything okay? He's like, Kyndal's in labor. And he literally threw everything on the counter and just booked it out the door. So I was still timing my contractions. And while I was doing that, Kenny was on Google. We're also texting back and forth with our moms, like, what did it feel like for you? Do you think this is the real thing? I ended up calling labor and delivery just to see if it would maybe be a good idea if I came in. I was like, hey, I've been having like, I don't know, they're like Braxton Hicks, but I'm having like mild cramping with it and I'm starting to have to breathe through them. And they've been pretty consistent for the past like 2 or 3 hours. I was a little frustrated because she asked if this was my first baby and I was like, no, this is my second. And as soon as I said that, she started treating me like I should just know. And so I was basically asking her if she thought it would maybe be a good idea if I come in or if I should just like wait it out. She basically just told me to have a good day because those pains could just go on for weeks. So it really could be nothing. That was it. Like, she was really no help, which, I mean, I know they can't tell you if you're like having contractions unless they're there to like put the monitors on you, but I didn't know, like, I didn't know if there's a way for them to be like, oh yeah, that sounds more of like a real contraction to where you're so frequent. I don't know, like, I just expected a little bit of a different answer and not to be treated like I should know better because I've already had a baby, even though I was induced with my first. I decided to not go to my COVID test. I think I had until like 6:30 to go and it was probably pushing like 5:30 by this point. But Kenny told me to go get in the bath, see if that doesn't help, and I thought it did. But about 5 minutes later, like, my contractions just continued. Like, they just kept coming and they were still just as painful. Like, the water didn't help at all. So I got out and Hendrix and Kenny were actually sleeping. They were taking a little nap. So I decided to finish getting my hospital bag packed in case this was the real thing. Then we could just grab our stuff and go. I really was trying to get my mind off this pain and I was still in denial. I was basically crying through my contractions by this point. I was trying to breathe through them, try different positions. Like, I think at one point I was literally down on all fours just because that's what I've seen women do and it literally did nothing for me. I just sat there and cried through them. To try to like distract my mind, I was like, okay, I'll do my makeup. That way I look somewhat presentable, which was like the dumbest idea because I ended up crying it off. You okay? Gotta go grab the baby. Oh, you just spit up all over me. Basically, I was just scared to go to the hospital just to be sent home. I thought maybe I was like 3 centimeters dilated. I completely forgot what contractions in labor feels like. I feel like every woman goes through that though. You're just gonna come here. So 7 o'clock rolls around and I literally cannot handle the pain that I'm in. I'm crying, almost screaming, not quite screaming, but I'm starting to like moan through my contractions and I'm like, okay, this has to be the real thing. Kenny helps me put my shoes on and I go grab pajamas for Hendrix because I knew either way we were going to be at the hospital overnight, whether it be because I'm laboring or because we had a baby. Either way, he would need pajamas. We're on the way to the hospital and I called labor and delivery because the hospital I delivered at, they have like 3 different buildings. I called labor and delivery to see which building they're in and to let them know I am on my way. At this point, I am screaming through my contractions. Like, it's almost how you see in the movies. The woman is like hanging on to that little, I don't know what the heck that thing is called, but like, grab it, top of the car. I'm literally hanging onto that. I have like one cheek off of the seat and I'm screaming and crying through my contractions. We're hitting every single red light and Kenny is trying so hard to reassure me that we're almost to the hospital. Like, we're getting so close, you're doing great. He was such a great support. I just gotta put that out there right now. He was such a great support. We get to the hospital and Kenny's trying to get Hendrix out. I'm standing at the main doors. I'm having another contraction. I'm screaming, and when I look up, there's like people in the parking lot and they're just staring at me. I didn't even care. I'm like, I am about to have this baby. As soon as we walked through the doors, there's a lady screening or like taking vitals for COVID. And she's like, what can I help you guys with today? And I was like, I need labor and delivery right now. But in the meantime, she had a security officer like go and get me a wheelchair, which was really nice, or else it probably would have taken me like 20 minutes to get to labor and delivery because I was in so much pain. She had asked if there was anybody to take our son, and I was like, no. We were supposed to have somebody here, but this has happened so last minute that he kind of had to come with us. We don't know anybody here. We just moved not that long ago. And she's like, well, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to have them go wait out in the car or just go home because they can't be here. You can only have one support person, and we can't have like little kids in labor and delivery or anything, which I already knew, but I still cried. I sobbed because I knew that I was gonna have this baby, and I'm like, there's no way that we could get somebody from Nevada or Idaho down here quick enough for Kenny to be there for the birth. And so I just started sobbing, and she's like wheeling me off to labor and delivery, and I hear Kenny yell at me. He's like, don't worry, I'll get it figured out. And so they go out to the car. I'm being wheeled to labor and delivery, and I'm like telling this lady, I'm like, you don't understand. The closest person that we have that could be able to take my son is 2 hours away. I ended up apologizing to her. I was like, I understand that you guys have regulations and you're just trying to keep everybody safe. I'm so scared. Hopefully the lighting and angle didn't change too much. I had to go feed the baby, so I apologize. But I think I left off with me saying I was at the labor and delivery desk. They asked me just enough questions to get me admitted. I could also hear in the background the nurse or the lady that like wheeled me up there. I'm not really sure what she was. I'm assuming she'd be a nurse. But I feel like the lighting keeps going in and out because of the freaking clouds. She was basically explaining to the labor and delivery team that dad and son are downstairs. They don't have anybody to watch their son. So what are her options basically, because they obviously want my support person to be there. And so they were like discussing that, and then they took me to triage, and they were so quick in there. They were like, okay, hurry, strip off your pants, like we're gonna check you. They didn't even put monitors on or anything. They checked me. I was 8 centimeters, and I wanted to just sob because I was like, this baby is coming. Like there's no time. There is no time. One of the nurses did explain, she's like, if you're okay with your son possibly being exposed to COVID, we will let both of them come up here. Kind of hard to make a decision like that so quick, but at the same time, I'm like, we're literally exposing ourselves every single day. Well, not every single day, but I mean, Kenny still is technically an essential. So I mean, he's at work, he comes home, he takes precautions, but I mean, it's like either way, we're still being exposed. I cannot do this without Kenny. I would rather risk that in a sense, and maybe that's really selfish of me, but I'm like, I'm risking my own health, my baby's health, my husband's health. Like anybody who is in this hospital right now is risking themselves. So I was like, that's fine with me, but let me call my husband just to make sure that like he's okay with that too. I literally had like a 2-second conversation with Kenny. I called him and I was like, hey, I am 8 centimeters dilated. They're coming downstairs to talk to you to see if both of you want to come up. It's just after 8 o'clock by this point, and the nurses were so quick to get me into a room. Like I was maybe in triage for a total of 2 or 3 minutes, long enough for them to check me and put me back in the wheelchair to take me to a room. So I had one nurse that's now stripping me down to help me get into a gown, one asking if I'm GBS positive, another one starting my IVs, another nurse checking me. There's probably a solid like 5 or 6 different nurses in there just trying to get everything going so quickly. The nurse that checked me told me I was 10 centimeters dilated. She asked if I wanted an epidural, and I was like, yes, please. She's like, I can't guarantee that he's gonna be here quick enough for you to get it, but I will still page him and we'll see what he says. And he basically was going to take 20 minutes to get up to my room, so that kind of just wasn't an option anymore. I had 2 nurses sitting at the end of the bed, and I was like, I really need to push, which is honestly the weirdest sensation because with my first delivery, I couldn't feel anything from the epidural, like literally anything. Not the pressure, not being able to push, which was such a bad experience. So this time around, it was just so crazy to be able to feel that urge of I need to push. The nurse was like, well, your doctor's not here yet, so you're gonna have to just wait, basically like cross your legs and hold it. But then the nurse next to her was like, well, we've delivered enough babies that I guess if you really needed to push, you could, like, you'd be fine. So I'm like, do I push? Do I not? But they did make note that my contractions were about a minute to a minute and a half apart and lasting maybe 40 seconds long. So I did not get a break at all in between contractions. Kenny and Hendrix both arrive to our delivery room, and Kenny's quick to get Hendrix distracted with like YouTube or something on his phone, and he puts him on the couch because there's like my bed here, and then across was like a little couch. Kenny comes running over to me to hold my hand and like see what's going on. So I started to push maybe 2 or 3 times and my water broke, and like I kept telling them, I'm like, I'm sorry, but like I literally cannot resist the urge to push. And the nurse was telling me my doctor's almost here, like she's not far at all. Kenny asked if we were just waiting on the epidural, and they told him, yeah, there's no time. She's just gonna have to go without. And I think he just saw a ghost or something, because he was like, oh, okay. So my doctor arrives and I tell her, like, I need to push. Like, this baby needs to come out. She looks at me and she's like, okay, push. She didn't offer to help put my legs back. She didn't have the stirrups up. They didn't even put a sheet over me. Kenny was really great to hold my hand, and he held my right leg back. And then the nurse next to me, her name was Pam. She was seriously amazing, and I would deliver at that hospital again just because of her. But I mean, she was willing to like, do you want me to hold your leg up? Do you want me to hold it back? Like, what can I do? And I feel like my OB was just chilling there to catch the baby and get her quick buck. Like, I feel like that's all she did. I remember screaming through every single push, every single contraction, and I remember at one point I kept looking at Kenny and I was like, baby, I'm sorry, but like, I don't think I can do this. I also remember mentioning to the nurses that my chest felt really warm, not like acid reflux where it kind of comes up. It felt like it was going this way, and then I could feel my mouth going numb, my lips going numb. I mentioned that also, and Kenny said that by the time he looked down at me, my lips were extremely swollen, which I'm assuming is just from the antibiotics for the GBS. Kenny was seriously amazing through the entire delivery. He let me hold his hand the whole time. He didn't let go. He's like, I don't care if you break my hand, squeeze as hard as you need to. He kept reassuring me. He's like, baby, he's almost here. Like, you're doing great. He's almost here. I can see his head. Such a different experience, and I couldn't even imagine not having him there. I think my biggest setback was definitely the ring of fire. I've heard every single person who's given birth naturally talk about this, and yeah, it literally feels like your bits are on fire. So keep in mind that I got to the hospital into my room at about 8 o'clock. So it was now 9:13, and our sweet Bennett was born. And as soon as he was, I yelled out to Hendrix, I was like, brother's here, Bennett's here. And he came running off that couch, and they grabbed him a stool so that he could see better. Kenny cut the cord, and like nothing else mattered at all. My OB did inform me that I did tear. She said I tore where my previous episiotomy was, so that was a little devastating because my episiotomy was not fun. And because I didn't have an epidural, stitches were not that great either. Granted, they did numb me, but she didn't numb me well enough so I could still feel like the stitches being done, and it just was not fun. Probably the sweetest thing, Hendrix kept telling me that I did such a great job. This always makes me want to cry every time I talk about it, just because never did I think that my son, my oldest, would be there to watch his little brother be born. Like, it's not something I would have ever planned to do because he's 4. That's terrifying to see, especially with how much I was screaming and crying and the amount of blood, and just, I can't even imagine, because I know I could see him like peeking around the phone, which is fine because he's curious, but I felt so bad. So they're getting me all cleaned up, stitching me up, whatever. Hendrix comes and crawls up next to me in the bed. He's like, Mom, it's getting late. Can we go home now? And so I had to explain to him that, you know, he's gonna go hang out with a friend because we did finally come up with something for him to have somewhere to sleep because it was getting late. Like he said, he was right, it's getting late, it's dark outside. So I did have to tell him that, you know, Mom and baby have to stay here for a little bit just to make sure that we're good and healthy, and then we'll come home. And, you know, I let him know that tomorrow Grandma's gonna be waiting for you because unfortunately, I don't think I mentioned this, but my mom wasn't able to catch a flight until the next day, early that morning. So, but we did name our son Bennett Charles Stokes, and he was 6 pounds, 13 ounces, 20 inches long, healthy as can be, and we are just so stinking in love with him. Hendrix especially, like, he kisses his head probably every 2 minutes of the day. It's so cute, but at the same time I'm like, okay, you need to give brother some space. I'm still in awe that I had a natural birth. I mean, women do it every day, but I went into this thinking I was gonna have another induction or a possible C-section, which was probably really dumb of me not to think like, oh, I could have this baby naturally. Like, it's just not something I ever thought I was capable of doing, but I did it, and it's just the best feeling to know that I did it. And I know I couldn't have done it without Kenny by my side. Like, he was just amazing through the whole thing, and I still am so proud of Hendrix, even because just to watch that whole process, and I don't know if he's even gonna remember. I don't know if he'll remember. He still talks about it though. I mean, he still talks about me being pregnant. He'll be like, Mom, do you remember last night when brother had hiccups in your belly? I think what makes this whole labor and delivery so special to me is just knowing that Hendrix was so involved in my pregnancy. Like, when this whole pandemic thing happened and he wasn't able to come to my doctor appointments anymore, like, he would literally sob and cry because he couldn't come to my doctor appointment and see brother. I'm so lucky to have the 2 boys that I do, and even to have Kenny at that. Like, I couldn't imagine my life without them. It's just because I'm so genuinely happy that I'm just taken back by where life has taken me. I do have hospital footage and basically a month's worth of videos for you guys. It's just been so hard to sit down and get this done because life happened. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you soon.